Like, thank you so much for your time. This is really cool. Cool. So, do you remember your first public performance or like the first gig that you played?
I do. This was prior to Radiohead. It was like my first school band, and I'd have been about 15, 16. And I was drumming in that band, and I hadn't actually played on a drum kit before. So I just thought, okay, no, I can do this. It'll be fine. And so that's what I did. I think I got away with it at the time. And I just look back on it thinking, oh my word, the kind of that kind of self-confidence. I mean, it wasn't particularly representative of me at that time, but there was something about music which kind of gave me a bit more confidence. And but also I look back at it and just think, I wish I could access that level of confidence again. Just bottle it. That's just something, you know, the first performance, and I think I've been trying to get back to there ever since, really.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I mean, I don't really know how you would come back from that, but if you have like a crazy, like any gigs that were really strange or just really crazy that really like stick out for you? I mean, that does stick out probably, but still.
There was before we were signed, when we were still called On a Friday. This was like about 2 or 3 years before we were signed. We played a friend of mine. He was the ENTS officer at LSE in London, and so he booked us to go and play at their kind of annual ball or whatever it was, and we ended up opening for Boney M on show, which is possibly kind of, I mean, inspired kind of billing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we were still an 8 piece at that point, so we still had 3 saxophone players as well at that point, and yeah, it was. But I mean, at the time, you know, kind of, I guess that was that felt kind of significant because Boney M were a band we'd heard of and we were opening for them, and that felt, yeah, that felt like a kind of a step up at the time. We didn't really play an awful lot of shows in those days. I mean, but by the time we signed, which was at the end of 1991, I think we played a total of about, I don't know, seven, maybe 8 shows. So over the course of, I mean, we started at the end of 1985, so that was over the course of 6 years. So yeah, one of those shows being opening for Boney M, I think is pretty good going actually.
Yeah.
Why was that? Why was that, Philip? Why did you why were you not doing the live thing? Because you know most young bands, that's what they do, right? They get together and cut their teeth, is the expression, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess we concentrated more on writing songs, and we were all off anyway. We were all off in different parts of the country, so we'd get back together, you know, during holidays and stuff like that, and work on a new set of material. And also, it was a time when actually, I mean, things improved venue-wise in Oxford in the 90s, but the late 80s, there weren't a huge amount of opportunities to play live. And, you know, the idea of, it felt like a huge outing if we played outside of Oxford. So, yeah, it's... I think we made up for it once we were signed. We did a lot of touring then, and we needed to. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the scene like in Oxford at that time? Like, how did it feel to you?
So when we were signed, I mean, but when we first started, which is, I say, end of 1985, I mean, there weren't any bands from Oxford. Nothing, you know, nobody'd really kind of come to any kind of national notice. But yeah, I think by the time we were signed, we were lucky. We came after Ride, and I think that had opened up a lot of kind of opportunities musically in Oxford. I think, you know, A&R departments were were more prepared to look at bands from Oxford. There's a whole Thames Valley scene going on. And then there were some key people as well in the Oxford music scene who were promoters. There was a promoter called Mac who used to do stuff at the Jericho Tavern where we were signed, and actually having somebody, a figure like that, who kind of knew a lot about music, was very committed and passionate about bringing known bands to Oxford. I mean, that was a very inspiring position to be in, I think, as a young band. And then other promoters as well, for the bigger venues, as somebody I work with an awful lot now when I'm recording my own solo stuff, and he called Nick Morbuff, but he then took it to the next level. He opened this venue called the Zodiac, and suddenly there were a lot of Oxford bands all doing kind of different types of music. But you had us, you had Supergrass as well coming through at the same time, and Egg, and there was Bride, and so it kind of all grew from there, really. And it was an exciting time to be in a band in Oxford, because we all lived in the same area of Oxford, in East Oxford. And so you just have this sense, it was a bit like being in a port town. You'd have this sense of bands coming in and coming out, and and you'd all work with the same crew. And it was a good time. Don't think we appreciated how much it was actually for want of a better term, a scene at the time. But looking back on it, it was yeah.
For sure, that sounds amazing. Kind of being in such close proximity to everyone at the time, though, was it like, did you have any points where you were just, I don't know, a bit fed up, or a bit like, this is challenging, there's so many people everywhere, or was it just all good? It was
all good, because I think the whole the town wasn't saturated with bands. There's enough people there for it to feel as though you're working in the same way, kind of towards the same point, if you like. But yeah, it's I think we still felt that actually, you didn't have to cut through an awful lot of levels before you became turn your notice in Oxford. There were enough bands so that there'd be the interest, but you didn't have to cut through a lot of noise to get there. So I think in a lot of ways it was a very good setup for us.
Nice. I just wanted to ask you about, you said you only did like 7 or 8 gigs in the early days. What were the crowds like? Did you kind of play to really small crowds?
When there were our own shows, I mean, we have very supportive friends, and I think that's always for any band starting out, that's always a necessary kind of support for you. But yeah, they weren't huge audiences, and in a way that was probably kind of far less intimidating as a band kind of trying to learn what they were doing. And our audiences didn't really start to pick up until, I don't know, around like just around our first album coming out. I remember even when we were signed, some of the earlier shows that we did, there used to be a venue called the Princess Charlotte in Leicester, and I remember playing that one. It was the one man and his dog audience, and I think every band has to do it, and it's good actually learning how to respond to any of those situations. You haven't okay, it might be one man and his dog, but that's an audience, and so you still need to bring a show to that as well.
Yeah, for sure. On that note, I've got the question that everyone asks everyone all the time, but what would you give, like, if you could give one piece of advice to young musicians, what would it be?
Mm. I would say, I mean, it's not, it wouldn't be like an industry hack or anything. It's more about kind of artist development, if you like. It's more about, I think for me, the important thing has been to kind of stay true to myself, trust my instincts on it. And that's where you kind of really develop your own musical voice. And that's where you find out a lot about yourself. So kind of whatever your musical outcome is, where that journey takes you, I mean, it might be that actually you stay on a very local level, but you can get this richness in your life, and you carry on developing your craft. And I think for me, that's the most important part of it. Whether people respond to that and then go on and listen to your music, buy your music, come and see you live is a different thing. You've got less control over that. But that side of it, that kind of artist development side of it, it enriches your life anyway. So it's that for me is the most important part of being a musician, I think.
Yeah, that's such a good outlook to have on it.
Jump in with one if I can.
Yeah.
Kind of, that's Philip, that's a real interesting point at the end there. It makes me think, obviously, you kind of seen the music industry change so much over the years. I'm curious to know from you in what ways, prime ways, you may think it's changed for the better and in which ways for the worse.
I think looking back to when we were signed, I think there was a lot more support. It kind of in terms of artist band development at the time. You know, we had the kind of the tour support. There was the venues the smaller independent venues didn't feel under as much threat as they do now. I mean, it's still an incredible network. You know, I've done work with Independent Venue Week, Sybil Bell there, and what she has done to kind of, alongside Music Venue Trust, to try and kind of boost that sector is incredible. But, you know, a lot of venues do go though as well. And I think they're, you know, when I've spoken about IVW before, I talk about those venues being the lifeblood of developing bands, really. And without that resource, you know, where can the artists learn their craft, really? And they're just incredible venues in their own way. I mean, I came last time I was in Halifax. I was at Grayston Unity actually, with Novelist, and we did a talk there, and it's just like, yeah, this is a brilliant place. It's you know, it's people who were kind of passionate about music and making those opportunities and kind of providing those. It's almost like the community of those venues is incredibly important. So I think, I mean, from a kind of a musical consumer point of view, I mean, having that access to any music is incredible, and that is kind of in terms of finding music that can inspire you and really pushing the boundaries of your musical tastes. That's incredible. But I think the key difference feels to me is in the support artists get. And I think I worry that to actually, for new artists coming through, I think they run the risk of hitting burnout much more than we did when we were starting out. It's, you know, so much DIY approach around it, which is fantastic. It's very empowering. You learn about the, you know, the industry that you're working in through that, and it's something, you know, what comes across is very directly from you. But yeah, I'm pleased we were a band kind of trying to find our feet when we were, rather than now. I think it would be a lot harder. Sorry, that sounds a little negative, doesn't it? I mean, and incredible bands are coming through at the moment.
No, it makes complete sense. No, I totally get what you're saying. Sounds like, yeah, the stars aligned for you and Radiohead at just the right time in terms of the environment around you and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much for your time. Neve, have you got anything else? Any other questions?
No, just I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Minster. It'll be really cool.
Yeah, that should be a really special gig. And Philip, I know you're playing with Lanterns on the Lake last year. Are you playing with them at the Minster gig in Halifax?
Yeah. So do my little opening set, and then straight back behind the drum kit after that.
Oh, okay, so it's a busy night for you then.
Yeah, I've never actually done that before.
Really?
Very separate kind of experiences for me. So it's going to be interesting to see what it's like switching between the two.
Fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to that as well. Thank you again for your time.